But okay. Good morning again, everybody. And wow, so the foundation of this thing, this series that we're doing on the spiritual exercises, comes from the middle part of step 11. I've said this before. Step 11 starts with when we retire at night. Then it goes on awakening, and then the third part is as we go through the day. And at the end of the second part of what we do on awakening, almost to the end, it says, be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they have to offer. And that's what we're trying to do here. I'm trying to relate everything to AA, and I'm trying to point out when I believe it's not AA, but that's part of what we do. And so we're working with this book called The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, and I'm going to be looking at the book. So if you've got a copy of the book and you want to follow along, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But another way to approach this stuff is I find personally that whenever I get out of sorts in any kind of way, I've gone to repeating these four phrases to myself and asking, is that what this situation is about? And the four phrases are: first things first, life on life's terms, live and let go and let God. So no matter what's going on, I usually can find that some element of those is where my problem is. I'm either not aware of first things first. You can't do everything. And sometimes you have to use Ignatius' word, you have to discern, what have I got to do first? And of course, in when we get deeper into our work, first things first means my relationship with God. That's the first thing. And everything else needs to contribute to that. And you'll hear people in meetings say, I'm either working my way away from a drink or I'm working my way closer to a drink. Well, that's good and it's true. But how about I'm either working away from God or I'm working closer to God, because that's what we're trying to do in this deal. The whole thing is living in relationship with a power greater than our human beingness, our minds and my bodies. So, and life on life's terms, Robin mentioned acceptance. That's what I'm accepting, life on life's terms, when I really want it on my terms. I want it on Jack's terms, and I get into trouble when it's not showing up on Jack's terms. It's showing up on life's terms, but it doesn't matter whether it's AA, my income taxes, the stock market, my relationship with anybody, but particularly my close relationship with my wife, or somebody I'm trying to help. It's huge. Life on life's terms means I'm reducing my demands on the situation. I'm accepting it the way it shows up. Live and let live has always been tough for me, because it means you stick to you and I'll stick to me. I'm not going to try to tell you how to live your life, and I'm going to let you live your life. I'll be helpful if I can, but whatever. And then finally, the biggest one, the hardest one, is letting go of my idea about what should happen here and letting the grace of God uh, be in and affect all things. So this is sort of and then you get to parallels to that, although they're more specific. We have things like, in this in this interpretation of the steps, step 11 is the primary deal. We are seeking through prayer and meditation only. That's the only thing we're seeking, is knowledge of God's will for our life. Translate that into God's purpose for my life and the power to carry that out. That's number one. 12 comes out of 11, and 10 is preparation for 11. 10 that's the pause. That's where I'm trying to rid myself of the stuff that impedes my relationship with a power greater than myself. So pause, ask and listen, do. Pause is step 10. Ask and listen is step 11, and the doing is step 12, because a very important part of our deal is faith without works is dead. I can have a great understanding and a great relationship with God, and if it's not translating into action in the world that I'm in, it doesn't mean diddly. It's just mental stuff. It's got to show up in the. Now, one of the things that Rick Warren is going to do is, if you're a Christian, um, your job is helping to build the kingdom of God, and it's something that shows up in a lot of Christian literature, and it's and his first purpose is worship. That's our prayer and meditation. His second purpose is fellowship, to live in fellowship, and all the challenges that involves. Third purpose is discipleship. That means going through the steps. And then you get to his fourth and fifth, which is our service component, a ministry where we are trying to serve some portion of the population, and mission, which turns out to be, as far as I can tell, my message, which only I can carry. And any of you can only carry your message, your struggles with a relationship with God, and based on your experience. Um, so so in fellowship, which is what we're talking about today, um, the kingdom of God, where it shows up for me in our book, is on page 83, when it says, it's talking about amends, and this happens before the ninth step promises. So we ask our Creator each morning in meditation, not when we happen to remember it, to show me the way. Show me the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love, the opposite of impatience, judgmentalism, selfishness, and fear, which are my primary character defects. Those are the primary colors of character defects. And I have to ask to be shown the way, because I'm not going to get that from here. I'm not going to get patience, tolerance, kindness, and love coming out of here. It comes from the grace of God, and it comes through me. And when I feel it from God, then at page 164, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. Well, that's a little insulting, but what do you mean I cannot transmit something I haven't? I'm trying to be helpful to people and all this stuff. But if I don't have a functional relationship with God, I can't transmit that. I can't demonstrate that. I can't live out of that. And that's what we're trying to do. You talk about, I meant to start off with, there's a book called Checklist Manifesto, and it's written by a doctor, and he's writing to doctors in hospitals, and he's saying, and there's some involvement with the World Health Organization. If you guys would use checklists, you'd have a lot better outcomes. You wouldn't have a surgeon leaving an instrument inside a person that they don't discover till they take an x-ray later on, and there's a pair of scissors, inside the person. And doctors don't want anything to do with checklists. And I've probably said before, I remember getting on a plane, and it was a small plane. It's going to go from Owl's Head to Boston. And I look in there, and there's the pilot, and he's got this manual in his hands, and he's going through his checklist. What do? Uh-oh, God, this guy must be a rank beginner. Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. He's got to look at this checklist. But the fact is that a checklist is so helpful. And I'm trying to present Rick Warren's purposes as a checklist. He's saying essentially, this is a spiritual life. When you do these things, this is a spiritual life. And it's directly related to our circle and our triangle. The circle with the triangle inside that says unity, recovery, service. Well, unity is fellowship, and recovery is discipleship, and service is mission and message, mission, ministry, and mission. And the circle is prayer and meditation, which is the primary way I try to improve my relationship with God. You can't say enough about that. Prayer is everything in this deal. everything, I think. And the more I'm in a prayerful state, the better everything goes. Now have I gotten off my track? So another way, so I'm saying, well, here's a checklist: pause, ask and listen, do 10, 11, and 12 all the time. And one of the items on the checklist of 10 is, God, how can I best serve thee? The book says, oddly enough and interestingly enough, this is the proper use of the will. Asking the question, God, how can I best serve thee? This is what your mind is supposed to be on all day long, is what the book says, constantly. You go to the next day meeting, before or after the meeting, just walk around and, well, how'd you do with that 10-step question of, God, how can I bet? How many times did you think about that today? And they're probably going to look at you like, who do you think you are, asking me that question? How can I best serve thee? You know, it's not something we naturally think of. We are obsessively self-centered creatures, focused on self-preservation, self-gratification, self-justification. So it takes these reminders that, yeah, you can do that. You go to page 25, you can do that. Go on, keep doing what you're doing, trying to blot out of your mind how miserable you are, or you can try to get God into your life. So another place it says this that I love is before the third step prayer. I'm pretty sure it's page 62. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Huh? What do you mean? I mean, this is before we've done any work, right? First of all, we have to quit playing God. Next, I read that as 1, quit playing God. 2, invite God into your awareness. Now, they give different ways to do that. You invite God in as your director and you're the actor, as your principal and you're the agent, as your parent and you're the child, or your friend. But invite God in. Quit playing God, quit deciding how everything's supposed to be, and invite God in and try to ask the question, how can I best serve thee? And then, of course, number 3 is do as you're directed to do. It's a third step promise that if I will keep close to my Creator and behave the way I think my Creator wants me to behave, I will be, I will be enabled to match the calamity with serenity of knowing I am doing my job. So, anyway, that's what we're trying to do here. And I'm trying to present you with these purposes, Rick Warren's purposes, as an area of a spiritual practice for you to take a look at, listen to what he says, and then decide whether that's relevant to what you want to do. So, with that in mind, I'm going to this book, Purpose Driven Life, and we're going to number 2. And I think that's going to be, oh no, we're going to purpose. What have I done? Oh yeah, no, purpose number 2, fellowship, day 15, and I can't remember what page that's on. We're getting close. And as I say, if you don't have this book, it's okay. You're whatever. All right. Purpose number 2 is you were formed for God's family. So his essential point is, and it's just interesting because for many of us live alone. I don't know what the statistics are, but many of us live alone, and many of us live in relationship with somebody. He's going to make the point that the first purpose is worship. That's me trying to interact with whatever you call it, God, Buddha mind, Allah, whatever you want, doesn't matter. The second is I'm trying to interact with a fellowship, and he's going to make the point continually that if you want to, well, The first commandment is to love God all you can. And the second commandment, and remember, these are translations of translations that we read. I like to hear it. The way I love God is by loving God's creation. It's not like they're two different things. If I really want to love God, I love God's creation, which means I love my neighbor. Very hard to do in these times. Um, and I'll remind you that when you get, page 67 says, don't do this. And it says, do this. And what it says to not do is we avoid retaliation or argument because they're ultimately not helpful. And it's talking about resentment, and resentment is a form of both argument and retaliation. Instead, it says we ask God to give us a kindly and tolerant view. And I wish they put a period there, but they don't. They go a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. This is love your neighbor. Um, and he's going to make the point that I had a time when I was studying and practicing Zen Buddhism, and they had a saying, the small sage hides in the mountains, the great sage hides in the marketplace. And what it meant was, yeah, you can go off and be by yourself and think about how great your God is and how great your life is. Where you really find out how you're doing with God's creation is when you're interacting with your neighbor, when you're in the marketplace, when you're in the thick of it. I was thinking about this morning. I live in this beautiful small Maine town. Um, and I hope I'll be here forever, but who knows? But I think you're gonna be talking to these people, and you're gonna say, "Can't be an I live in a paradise," and sometimes I really wonder if I'm supposed to be in an inner city slummers. I don't know, but so I'm telling you something, but I'm not sure I could do it. And this afternoon I'll go off on my boat and be by myself for some time and whatever. But I do believe what he's saying is true. You find out about your relationship with God by how you're relating to your neighbor. You can't. He's going to say somewhere, you can't love God and hate your neighbor. It's not possible. I mean, you're really living in self-delusion that you love God if you're hating your neighbor, and resentment's a form of hating. So, at any rate, he starts right off day 15, formed for God's family, and I'm trying to make a little nudge there. The family means the kingdom of God. The family means a place of patience, tolerance, kindness, love. Every AA meeting you go to, I hope somebody there is focused on feeling that meeting be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. Even when somebody says something really stupid or, acts not in accordance with what we think AA meetings should be like. That's where we you were formed for God's family. We grow spiritually in community. It takes a village. It really does. I don't think I'd be anywhere without the fellowship. And what he does in these different days is he talks about he talks about the benefit. I'm on day 15 till we get to done with this, but the benefits of being part of God's family, and it's what we show up as the promises in different parts of the book, and there are more step 12 promises than anything else. Um, Day 16 is what matters most, and he's going to say love, and I think AA is going to add service. That what matters most is love and service. It's the two components. because love without service is dead, isn't it? I mean, love, if it's not showing up in our world, it doesn't mean much. Life is all about love, and his statement, it's on page 125. Learning to love unselfishly is not an easy task. It runs counter to our self-centered nature. That's why we're given a lifetime to learn it. Um, he's so good about, another little checklist for you. Uh, Let me see if I can remember this. Um, oh, number one, lack of power is our dilemma. Number two, a relationship with God is our solution. Number three, contempt prior to investigation is the enemy. That is the enemy for most of it, that we judge something and we rest in that judgment. In the resentment section, it says to conclude that the others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. We never get to until we get to the fourth column of a resentment inventory. We don't see our role in it. We don't see where we were being selfish, dishonest, or frightened. Um, we stop with "you're wrong" and "I'm right," and "I'm going to hate on you till you change your mind and behave differently, and then everything will be better." Um, and I believe that when page 25 says you only get two alternatives, pal, keep doing what you're doing, or accept spiritual help, you could also say you only get two alternatives: be annoyed with everything or be grateful for everything. Now you can flip back and forth. I think we all do it all day long. But those are my essential, my essential speeds. That's my forward and my reverse. And we hear all the time, you don't have a neutral. You're either in forward or you're in. I'm either annoyed by everything or I'm grateful for everything, even the tough stuff. Um, I copied before we began, if I can find it, because this is another checklist for you. Um, so so this is for any of you that have gotten into the spiritual exercises. Um, this is the rules for discernment, first week, rule number 9. It's section 322. Um, There are three principal causes for our finding ourselves in desolation. Now, these presuming you understand what desolation is, and the definition we're working with here is it was in there earlier. Consolation is when I am in sync with God's purpose for my life, not in sync with Jack's purpose for Jack's life, for what Jack calls Jack's life. I am in sync with God's purpose for my life, and I know that because I have feelings of faith and hope and love. Feelings of faith and hope and love are not the goal. I'm not trying to get faith and hope and love into my life. I'm trying to live in sync with God's purpose for my life, and I'm promised that if I do that, I will feel faith and hope and love, which translates to me partly as enthusiasm. I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing. Um, and desolation is the opposite, out of sync with God's purpose for my life. And I know that because I have feelings of doubt and fear and despair or hopelessness, the opposites of faith, hope, and love: doubt, fear, and despair. So the question comes up, why, if God loves us so much, why would God permit me to sink into desolation? So St. Ignatius, 500 years ago, by the way, said, well, I got three reasons why you sink into desolation. And just remember, this is a translation from the Spanish that it was written in. Um, and there are 5,000 translations of this work. So I'm reading you one of them, Uh, but you can, I find great value in taking somebody else's thing that means something to me and putting it into my own words. So I'm going to do that here. But there are three principal causes for our finding ourselves in desolation. One, the first is that we are lukewarm, lazy, or careless in the practices of the spiritual life. So spiritual consolation goes away because of our fault. This is a tough one. I sink into desolation because I've let up on my spiritual drill. And this is where the fact that the steps end with practice, it doesn't say accomplish, it says practice this stuff. And anytime you read about anybody focused on prayer, they're going to tell you consistency and persistency. Emmett Fox says you need two spirations, inspiration and perspiration. This is about doing something over and over again until it takes on a meaning that you're promised, but you don't experience yet. So, reason number one why I go into desolation is me. I've let up. I'm not sticking to my drill. And our drill is the five things that we hear about early in the program. Pray in the morning to be kept away from a drink or a drug. Uh, Read a couple of pages of our spiritual literature, the book. Go to a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Have some one-on-one contact with another alcoholic. And five, at the end of the day, pray. And the prayer is simply thank you for this day, regardless of what happened in this day. Thank you. Going to sleep with gratitude instead of annoyance. Um, Secondly, spiritual desolation tests our quality and shows how far we will extend ourselves in God's service and praise without the generous remuneration of consolation and overflowing graces. Uh, it's complicated language, and I got to translate this stuff to um, to get it. But what they're saying is, it's when you're not feeling so great, you're not feeling God's consolation. This is where you get a chance to strengthen yourself spiritually by continuing to do what you think is a good spiritual practice to get you toward whatever goal you're seeking. And I'm telling you, I think the big book says you see to it that your relationship with God is right and you're going to have a great life. And we're going to tell you how to do it. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to God and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. They're telling you how to make sure that your relationship with God is right. But that relationship is number one. And the very thing that we are terrible at, the first of the bedevilments, we were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. That's how we come in. And having this relationship is the heart of the whole deal. So, third, spiritual desolation gives us true knowledge and understanding so that we may perceive within ourselves that on our part, we cannot arouse or sustain overflowing devotion, intense love, tears, or any other form of spiritual consolation, but that all this is the gift and the grace of God our Lord. So we are not to build our nest where we do not belong, becoming elated in mind to the point of pride and vainglory, and putting down to our own account devotion or other forms of spiritual consolation. I love it. 500 years. Don't build your nest where you do not belong. Don't try to take credit for something you can't take credit for. Don't build your home in your feeling about yourself and think you did it. Everything is the gift and the grace of God. Everything. And my job is getting honest, open, and the ability to receive. He's going to say later on that one of the wonderful things about trying to live in fellowship is learning both giving and receiving. How many times have you heard, I have a problem asking for help? That's a receiving problem. I'm anxious to give help, but I have real trouble asking for help because I don't want to admit that on my own I am nothing. On my own I am just an illusion in this here mind that I am something. That's why I find the third column of the resentment inventory is so powerful, because it's asking us, okay, you're annoyed with this over here. Here's some examples of that. And you go to the third column, which aspect of me is hurt or threatened? That means fear by the situation I've just, or the person's behavior that I put in column one. Is it my pride, my self-esteem, my ambitions? With me, it's always my ambitions. I want a lot, and when the world doesn't give it to me, I get resentful. Because I'm experiencing fear, I'm not going to get what I think I need. What I'm learning through an improved relationship with God is I don't even really know what I need. I've been living a whole life. I'll be 80 next summer, thinking I knew what I need. I know what I need. I need money, toys, sex, and alcohol for sure to make everything else go. Whatever. Now I'm finding, well, okay, so this third one is going through desolation is the only way we're going to learn what real humility is about. And real humility for Ignatius, I mean, he would seek humiliating situations. He would ask, but it's like the eighth of the Beatitudes is, blessed or fortunate are those that are persecuted for their righteousness. What? You're saying that's a good thing, that I'm persecuted for my righteousness? I thought I was promised if I lived a righteous life, everything was going to be hunky-dory. But that's where we experience humility. And the key phrase here is that everything is the gift and the grace of God. I can't take credit for anything. I will give myself credit for one thing. I kept coming back. I kept trying. And the hardest time for me was this period of desolation where I hated everything and I didn't want to do anything. And yet that very state is what got me desperate enough and humble enough to ask God to restore me to sanity so I could better do God's will. And all of a sudden, the third step prayer, it's not just relief of the bondage of self so I can feel better. It's relieve me of the bondage of self so I can better do what you want me to do. And the bondage of self are my resentments and my fears and my sense of remorse about my selfish, self-centered behavior. I thought I was going to zip through this thing. I got to speed it up here. Okay, it's all about love, learning to live unselfishly. Okay, I'm day 16, page 126. He starts talking about the best use of love, and he gives a bunch of things. Life without love is really worthless. Love will last forever. We will be evaluated on our love. I don't know about this, the whole thing of Judgment Day and your appearance in heaven, but he does say this, page 129, best expression of love is time. And I think he really adds, and attention. It isn't just time with somebody, it's that I'm paying attention to what's happening in that moment. The most desired gift of love is not diamonds or roses or chocolate. It is focused attention. Sacrifice is the essence of love. Lots of good. The best time is love is now. I feel like saying, Oh, really? No kidding. Best time to love is now. So I'm moving on to day 17. Um, and this is this is where I think he says essentially that well, he makes a statement. Uh, we are to live in fellowship. We cannot fulfill God's purpose for our lives in isolation. This is pretty big, I think. And it's the same as faith without works is dead, or the great sage and the small sage. Because I can't contribute to the building of the kingdom off on my boat. um, Forgot that I said that. Um, okay, talks about being this is a good quote on, well, I can't even see the page. 133. We discover our role in life through our relationships with others. Isn't that interesting? You start discovering, apparently God wants me to be a good husband, a good father, a good member of my community. When I was working, a good employee. Um, I discover by what shows up, apparently this is part of my purpose in life, or I wouldn't be here unless I've tried to act contrary to it. Um, he talks about your local fellowship. A lot of the focus is on the church, of course. He wants an organized, AA is so amazing that we're not organized the way traditional organizations are. Um, he says at the top of page 134, whenever we become careless about fellowship, everything else begins to slide too. Page 135, why you need a church family, why you need the fellowship of AA. And it moves you out of self-centered isolation. It's one of his benefits of why you need fellowship. It helps you develop your spiritual love muscle. It helps you in building of the kingdom. Um, and particularly his last reason, a church family will help keep you from backsliding. That's the importance of going to meetings, so you're sitting in a community of people and you're seeing simultaneously what to do and what not to do, what works and what doesn't work. Um, and I just want to point out on the last page of that, the page 139, he always asks a question at the end of the day. There will be a question to consider. Does my level of involvement in my local church demonstrate that I love and am committed to God's family? So that's easy to translate. Does my level of involvement with my home group demonstrate that I am committed to these principles and I'm trying to grow along spiritual lines? I hope I'm going to get through this, but I don't think I'm going to. Day 18, page 140. Life is meant to be shared. Oh, yeah. He does a pretty good job of what it takes, what we experience in fellowship, and you'll relate to this stuff. In the first one is in real fellowship, people experience authenticity. Just change that to honesty. It's a fundamental part of what people are always blown away when they're new to AA or they come to hear what people are talking about, because they've never heard that kind of conversation before, where people are honestly sharing difficult, painful stuff about their lives. Um, in real fellowship, people experience mutuality. This is the art of giving and receiving. And I'm telling you, a lot of alcoholics, uh, we need help in both those areas, but particularly in receiving. In real fellowship, people experience compassion. Well, he says sympathy. Compassion is such a big element in the Buddhist tradition. And um, he says sympathy, let's say compassion, meets two fundamental human needs: the need to be understood and the need to have your feelings validated. Every time you understand and affirm someone's feelings, you build fellowship. A beautiful statement that I believe is applicable to what we're trying to do. And his fourth reason, in real fellowship, people experience mercy. Mercy, I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to look it up and see what typical definitions are, but I believe for me, it's experience the grace of God. And the grace of God is a combination of power, because lack of power is our dilemma, and intelligence, wisdom. Um, the grace of God is both the guidance. Step 10 says our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Understanding is my understanding of the situation. Effectiveness is my effective behavior, the power to actually act in an effective way. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Let's see, that's day 18, so I'll remember next time. We are going to be meeting next Sunday and the Sunday after that, and we'll get to day 19, 20, and 21, and continue to talk about fellowship. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop this recording, I think, and then we will have some open discussion. Whoops. Oh, where do you? Let's see. Thank you. Whoops.